We are all on a road, a journey. Some are on a road to community or a sense of self-worth. Others are on a road to recovery or discovering their faith. No matter what road you find yourself on, this series is to help you know you're not alone, and that Jesus will not only help you overcome the obstacles you'll face along the way, but will navigate you to redemption only found in Him.
Good morning. How's everyone? Good. It's a great day. We lost an hour of sleep, but we all seem to be not worse for the wear, so that's good. So we've started a new series called The Road To, and last week Brian spoke about the road to community and spent time talking about Lent and his experience with Lent. So based on that, I decided that for Lent, I was going to give up not eating chocolate. No, seriously, my big takeaway from his message, and I might not say it exactly right, but I think I have the essence of it, was instead of surrounding yourself with people that like you, look for people who need you. And that's just a great thought for me for the week, and a great start to this series. So this morning we're going to talk about the road to fulfillment. The road to fulfillment. And as we go there, I take a look back about 20 years ago or so when I was at a very early stage in my current career. So for those of you who don't know, I manage and lead a team of sales agents. We provide benefits for people. And I was kind of very early on in that journey, and our company did the strangest thing. They sent us on a trip. So they took us in groups of 20 outside of San Antonio, Texas. They actually brought in the sports psychologist for the San Antonio Spurs. But the whole weekend was this idea of essentially finding yourself, finding fulfillment and finding your meaning and all of those things. And they did all kinds of activities. We went horseback riding, which is a big mistake with me, but somehow I made it through that. But at the heart of all of that was exactly what I was going through at that time in my life. And it was when I was really first introduced to a song by a group called U2. Not necessarily on the top of the charts of Christian music, but I was introduced to a song that the cry of the heart in that song just spoke so directly to me. And it's a song called I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. And let me share some of the lyrics with you. It says, I have climbed the highest mountain. I've run through the fields, only to be with you. I have run, I have crawled, I have scaled these city walls, only to be with you. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And as the song continues, he sings, I believe in the kingdom come. Then all of the colors will bleed into one. But yes, I'm still running. You broke the bonds, and you loosed the chains, carried the cross of all my shame. You know, I believe it. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Wow. What a thought. even when I believe, there's still something that I'm searching for. And frankly, if you look at the statistics of the messes in our lives and you look at those statistics within the church and outside of the church, they're pretty similar statistics. And it's right where I was. I believe it. But I'm still searching for something. There's still something missing. And what I was questioning at that time was, does my life really matter? Do I really make a difference? This whole idea of fulfillment. And so my question for you this morning is simply this. Have you found what you're looking for? So let's talk about it. On this road to fulfillment. So what I'd like to do is read a little bit of scripture, and we'll find that in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And we'll start the reading of verse 4. It's a familiar passage of Scripture, but let's kind of read through it. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they'll cease. Where there are tongues, they'll be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection, as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. So as we enter this journey on the road to fulfillment, really the first part of that journey is finding your why. Finding your why. And your why is really your purpose. It's why you do what you do. Why am I here? What is it that really matters? And I think what we'll find is that the foundation of faith is what creates your why. There's a chapter in Hebrews, the 11th chapter, that's just simply known as the faith chapter. And it's just story after story after story of people living by faith. And so if we could go there real quick, Hebrews chapter 11, starting in verse 7. It says, by faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of righteousness that is in keeping with faith. And by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, and as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who made the promise. And you can go on and read in that chapter about Moses and others, and the common thread, the common denominator with all of them is they found their why. And that why was based in this foundation of faith, that they believed in something or someone who was bigger than them, who was beyond them. And that's where their faith rested, and it created the foundation from which everything else that they did in life emanated. I mean, you got to think about it a little bit. Could you imagine being Noah in the middle of a desert day after day, building this huge boat where there's never any rain, never any wetness? That had to be hard a few of those days, don't you think? And the reality is that that foundation of faith became the basis from which everything else that all of these people did operated on. So several years ago, a pastor, Rick Warren, wrote a book that everyone's shaking their head yes, because everyone knows what the book was. It sold like a bazillion copies, and it was called The Purpose-Driven Life. And the reason it just swept, I mean, it wasn't just within the church. Throughout all of America, that became just an overwhelming success. And the reason is because people are searching for their why. They're searching for their why. But there are actually a couple of things that I think displace our faith and displace that foundation. The first is when things are going really, really good. Because what happens is when things start going really, really good in my life, it becomes easy to start scooching that foundation of faith over here and start puffing my chest out here and thinking, this is me. I've got this together. I'm making this happen. And the second is when things are going really, really, really badly. And when the pain and the struggle is there, it can lead to bitterness and an absence of faith. And the reality is, whether things are going poorly or they're going greatly or they're somewhere in between, the foundation still needs to be faith. That still needs to be our why, our basis of operation. So I shared a story several years ago that I apologize if you've heard it before, but it just fits perfectly in what we're trying to talk about. And it is why I will never go sailing again. So we had friends that were really into sailing. They had this catamaran and that, and they were always wanting us to go with them. So finally, they talked us into going, and we drove out to about an hour out to this big, huge, massive lake. And then when we got there, it's not like you just kind of push a button and the thing pops up and you're ready to go in the water, right? It's all kinds of stuff, putting this together and getting it water ready and ready to go. And of course, I knew nothing about it, so it's just an hour of sheer boredom while they're putting everything together and getting this catamaran ready to go. So finally, after about an hour, they get it all together. We get it in the water, and off we go. And it starts out, there's just like a nice gentle breeze, and we just kind of glide out into the middle of this big, massive lake. And we get out to the middle of this lake, and all of a sudden, nothing. No wind, not a breeze, nothing. And it's about 85 degrees outside, and the sun is just beating down on us and baking us, and the tarmac in this catamaran is black. So it's just like we're in a sauna, and we're just sweating to death. And I'm like, all right, Jim, what do we do now? And so I figured he's going to get a little trolling motor out or something and just kind of wheel us back in. Instead, he reaches down in a compartment and hands me an oar. I'm like, you're kidding me. So literally, we start rowing this big catamaran all the way from the middle of the lake back toward the shore. And again, so by the time we get there, I'm worn out, I'm drenched in sweat. And just as we get almost back to the shore, all of a sudden the wind kicks back up. And the boat starts to go. And Jim was like, oh man, this is great. We're going to drop the girls off. Everyone's hot and sweaty and tired. And we're going to go out. This is going to be great. You're going to love this. This is just going to be awesome. So we drop our wives off and head out. And man, the wind really starts picking up. And that catamaran is really starting to go, and then all of a sudden, instead of just really starting to go, the wind really picks up. I mean, it's howling, and we're talking white caps all over the lake and everything, and it's getting crazy, and it's getting a little bit scary, and then all of a sudden, the boat really starts to go, and it looks like it's going to tip over, and so Jim is yelling all these nautical terms to me, tack left, tack right, and so I yelled the only nautical term I knew back at him, ahoy, matey! And sure enough, over the boat went, and we are plopped into the water in the middle of these white caps in the middle of this lake. And fun, huh? Oh, this sailing is great. So he's obviously done this before, and there's some sort of rope that he's pulling on, and it starts moving the boat, and then, centrifugal force takes over. And so as it does, the catamaran obviously pops up right side. Well, he's obviously done this before, so as the catamaran is coming around, he's just grabbing the rope and timing it and walks right up so he's just standing right on top of it. Me, on the other hand, haven't been in this situation before, and as that catamaran turns over, the giant pontoon is coming right down on my head. And so I just put my hands up and let it push me under the water. So the catamaran pops back up, and the wind is still blowing 40 miles an hour. So when that catamaran popped back up, guess what? The wind caught the sail, and it started to go, and the only thing that was hanging off the edge was a little gizmo that you steer the catamaran with. And I grabbed on for dear life as that catamaran started just flying through the water. So I'm just hanging on for all I got. And the catamaran is headed straight for this huge bank of rocks. And so this is the first time Jim had a look of panic on his face because there's no way to steer the boat. And so I tried to yell at him, which was my next mistake because I started drinking the lake, swallowing bluegill. But I fought for everything that I had and pulled myself just at the last minute till I could make it onto the tarp of that catamaran. He grabbed the steering mechanism, and we just missed the rocks. And that is why I'll never go sailing again. But everything about life happened in that episode. Because sometimes the breeze is blowing, we're cruising along, it's all good. Sometimes we're just plain stuck and going nowhere. And sometimes the storms hit and it's a little rough. And other times we're just hanging on for dear life. But in all of those circumstances, they can't dictate our faith. That foundation, our why, dictates all of that. And if we get our arms around that, we'll have the first steps on the journey accomplished, finding your why. The second thing that we need to do is finding your where. Finding your where. So your where is your destination. It's what you're trying to achieve. It's where you're trying to get to in your life. And when you think about your where, it's the fervency of hope that creates your where. The fervency of hope. So think about this. The very essence of hope is this. I'm yearning for something that I don't have. And I'm never quite there. I believe it's possible. I hope it will happen. I think it can happen. But I'm still yearning for it. It's the very essence of the word itself. And if you look at our story in Hebrews in chapter 11 again, verse 13, it says this. All these people were still living by faith when they died. And catch this, they did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. And so this whole idea of hope is all about reaching out and believing what's possible.
Yes. Amen.
And it is the fuel that keeps us going. It's the fuel that keeps us going when we are hanging on for dear life and when the storms do hit. It's that hope, it's that fervency of what I believe can be that keeps us moving and keeps driving us forward.
Yes.
So let me refer to one of the most highly acclaimed motion pictures for a better definition of hope. The movie is called Dumb and Dumber. So if you know the story, it's about a limo driver, Jim Carrey, who plays a character by the name of Lloyd Christmas. And it's a whole involved story. He picks up this woman, and it involves a briefcase and that. We're not going to get into all of that. But he immediately, love at first sight, falls in love with this woman. And so the whole movie's about his pursuit of this among all the other their plots. But he finally comes to a place where he confronts her about how deeply he loves her and is there any possibility here? And so he asks her, what are my chances? She says, not good. He says, what, like 1 in 100? She says, more like 1 in a million. He looks at her and says, so you're telling me there's still a chance? All right? So if you've heard that phrase, that's where it came from. And if you think about it, that is the definition of hope. That I believe that there's still a chance. I believe it's possible. I believe that it can happen. So when we're looking for our where, there are some things that crush our hopes. The reality is the weight of life, the weight of our circumstances, the things that happen many times crush people's hopes. So what started out as, you're telling me there's still a chance, has ended and there is no chance. I have no hope. Remember a song that I like, although it has I think a sad effect to it, is a song called Jack and Diane. And the chorus of that song says, whoa, life goes on far after the thrill of living is gone. And that, my friends, is someone who has no hope. But hope is the fuel, the mechanism that keeps us moving forward and keeps us believing. So, have you ever had a really good day? I don't mean just a good day. I mean a perfect day. Let me talk to you about David. So David was born in Canada, and like most boys born there, his dream was to be a professional hockey player and play in the NHL. And when he was 6 years old, he determined that he wanted to be a goalie, that was the position for him. And so David grew up playing hockey in all of the leagues, as all the boys did. And on the way to his dream, it got derailed. Because as a young man, he became very, very ill and actually required a kidney transplant. Unfortunately, his mom was a match and donated her kidney to him. And so ended his dream to play in the NHL. But he loved hockey, so he wanted to still be involved with it. So he took a position as a kind of a manager, caretaker person for one of the minor league hockey teams. And he actually drove the Zamboni, the thing that does the ice. And there's a weird thing in hockey. So in the NHL, they only carry 2 goalies on the team during the game. And every NHL game requires that the home team have an emergency goalie available just in case on either the visitor or the home team the goalies get hurt so that they can continue the game. And so David found himself in section 317, eating a Reuben, when the call came. We need you to get down here and get dressed. You're going to have to go into the game. And you see, David had been able to, because of his connection to hockey, continue to practice with the team so that they designated him as the emergency guy. And so he goes into the game, the first 2 shots right by him for goals. And then he toughens up and he stops the next 7 shots in a row and wins the game for the visiting Carolina Hurricanes. 42-year-old kidney transplant, is the only emergency goalie to ever win an NHL hockey game. Man, that'd be like me sitting in the stands in Cleveland and the manager tapping me on the shoulder saying, hey, you need to get in there. We need you to play shortstop today. And getting up in the 9th inning and hitting a walk-off home run. I mean, it is just unbelievable. That's a great day. You know what? Do you know what David got for that? He got paid $500 and he got to keep the jersey. Oh, and he also got a lifelong memory to remind him that hopes and dreams can come true. And that what you hope and what you dream matters and you don't give up. You find your why. That foundation is faith. You find your where. That's hope. Third thing is finding your way. Finding your way. So, your way is actually how you live out your life. Your way is, the key to your way is love. In living my life in love. And the fostering of love is what creates your way. You see, the reality is this. It does not matter how much faith you have. It does not matter how much hope you have. If it isn't enveloped in love, it doesn't mean anything. And the love that we're talking about is, well, so let's go to those verses that we read in 1 Corinthians. They're familiar to you, right? The reason they're familiar to you is they're read in 99% of all weddings that ever take place. But I've got news for you. Paul didn't sit down and write that so that you would have something special to read at your wedding. He wrote it because he was talking about the principle and the way that we are to live our lives and what really matters. I mean, if you think about it, when Jesus was pressed as to what's really the most important thing, what did he say? Love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself. Love is the key. It is the conduit through which everything flows. And the way is fostered by love. So I am this year having a milestone anniversary. One of the ones that ends with a 0. I won't tell you what the first number is. I was thinking about that, and I got to tell you, it is really a challenge to love someone for that long. And actually, I don't mean you, Roxanne. I mean it's hard for you to love me for that long. So anyway, we're riding in the car, and she's scrolling through things, and she says, "Oh, I found something that is a new vow that should be added to a woman's wedding vows at the wedding." I'm like, "Okay, well, let's hear it." And she reads it, and it goes like this: "I promise to always help you find things that are right in front of your face for as long as we both shall live." Now, I am convinced that women secretly have some sort of superpower, because there is no way that flashlight was right there. Now, you got to understand, this is actually a two-way street. It isn't just all us. So there's a vow for the men. And the vow goes something like this: "I promise to always give you 90% of the space in the bathroom for as long as we both shall live." So think about it, guys. I mean, I basically use 6 things: toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, towel, maybe a little hair gel. I'm pretty much good to go. Statistically, I've read that the average woman has 337 items in their kit. And that the average man cannot name more than 20 of them. I mean, you think about it. There's curling irons, crimping things, flat irons. I mean, it is like an arsenal. Now, I understand it is a little bit different for a man and a woman. For example, as a man, growing a mustache is optional. Right? This is where I started getting in big, big trouble. So here's the key to it all. When Roxanne and I argue, 100% of the time, she gets the last word. Anything I say after that is the beginning of a new argument. But seriously, loving others first is a challenge. It's easy to love myself first. And the kind of love that Paul was talking about is the type of love that says, "What can I do for you?" And there are things that crush that out of our lives as well. There are circumstances and things that make it difficult many times to operate that way. But I would challenge you with this. If you're going through a difficult time in your life where it's really hard to focus on loving someone else, the challenge will be to do that. Because what you find when you truly express love that way, and how you do it is with love, is that something magical happens to them. But something just as magical happens to you, into your circumstance. So I'm at a stage in my career where I'm doing a lot more looking back than I am looking forward. And that's okay. As I look back, that look back takes me to that weekend all those years ago when I was truly struggling with if what I was doing really mattered. Did it really make a difference? Did it really impact someone's life? And as I do that look back, you know what doesn't come to mind? What doesn't come to mind are achieving some sort of sales goal or some sort of award or anything like that. What comes to mind is thinking about a young lady who came to work, and my responsibility was to mentor, who was going through a divorce, had 3 kids, and was trying to figure out how and if and how she was ever going to make it. And to have the blessing of working with her to where today she's one of the top agents in our company, and is going to be able to send her kids to any college that they want to go to, and to see her life healed. Or it's another one whose husband has health challenges so that it's very difficult for him to do his job, and their goal and their desire is for her to do well enough that he could retire. And I get to watch that all unfold and get to have conversations with them about what's going on in their lives, and to truly just express love to them, just to love them. And that's what matters. And that's what makes all the difference. And that's what wins the day. So here we are. When you set everything else aside, there is only 3 things left. Faith, which is your why, your purpose. Hope, which is your where. It's what you're trying to achieve. And love. That's your way.
Yes. Amen.
And I think you'll find that if you get your arms around those 3 things, you will find that you have found what you're looking for. God bless you.